Welcome to another live stream. For some of you that are common people who stop by, you might have noticed we have rebranded to Lighting Booth. So the channel will have its own Discord channel. You can find that on the description in this video and previous video. I would like to welcome our interviewee, Dylan King from Retro Studios, who we will talking about today.
Hello.
Hello, Dylan King. So we're just gonna get started, and we know people come and go a lot, so we won't worry too much about that. So, Dylan, we want to break down your journey so far. Although brief, it is still interesting because a lot of people are going into becoming a lighting artist these days. A lot of people are also having a difficulty becoming a lighting artist, and a lot of people have a different background when trying to be a lighting artist. So, why don't you briefly explain from you being a student to becoming a lighting artist at Retro Studios? You can be brief, and I might interfere you with kind of detailed questions as you talk, of course.
Mm-hmm. All right, awesome. So, I mean, the journey's quite long. I think it all starts back towards college, like beginning of college, sort of that high school era, and kind of what got me into art actually. Because what really got me into art was a lot of illustration, and that kind of what pushed me to go to college, go to DigiPen, stuff like that. And throughout DigiPen, I transitioned from illustration to environment, and then kind of halfway through college, I decided I really like these parts about illustration. I really like these parts about environments, and that's kind of what led me. And the final image is what kind of led me towards lighting. And that's kind of what I really like about it. And after that, I was very fortunate enough to get a mentorship with Bluesky Studios before it kind of died. And then after that, I think I got a really, really, really handy, some really good advice from a lighting artist in the industry. Just kind of about direction and what I should be doing, what I should be learning. And finally, I applied to a ton of different studios, and Retro reached out to me, and I was able to get set up with a contract job during my school. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Cool. So let's mix it around a bit. Then let's start with the advice you got from this lighting artist. What are the advices that was useful to you that you would like to pass on today?
Awesome. So the advice I got was from a lighting artist, Nora Sharmick. I reached out to them because I think it was for first school we had to do a something called an informational interview. So we just had to reach out to an artist and in the industry and ask them about their experience, kind of what got them into the industry, and that was actually really useful and very beneficial. It's actually pretty surprising what you find out when you just reach out to someone. They're pretty quick to respond. They're like, hey, yeah, I want to talk about this. But I think the most important thing was, how technical it was.
Right.
A lot of lighting derives from a very technical and conceptual knowledge. And so understanding that and learning how to push research and push, again, that conceptual understanding really helped me out as a lighting artist. And not only that, but they were also able to get some really good just thoughts on their experience in the industry and how they, I guess, grew up.
Right. And have you had the time to use Unreal Engine 5 yet or no?
Oh, yeah. Lumen
Right.
is fantastic. Very excited about the real-time GI. I've been trying to but when the trailer first came out, I was trying to figure out how they were doing it, and so I had to look into all these different methods of real-time GI that's feasible.
So how do you feel about Unreal Engine 5 then as a lighting artist? Because as you said, it is very technical as well as obviously artistic and understanding color theory and composition. There are quite a lot that goes into being a lighting artist. but you specifically said technical skills. Now with Unreal 5 and Lumens, it does make a lot of the technical skills require a bit less initially anyway. How does that make you feel in terms of lighting artists, and where we stand in the coming time now with that kind of tool out of the box for everyone to use?
Mhm. So it's it's a direction that the industry is heading towards, right? There's no doubt that like real time, a lot of people are moving towards real time effects and real time lighting scenarios. You can see in like games like Path of Exile or Diablo or um, Call of Duty, stuff like that. But at the same time, it's just not at a point where many studios are ready to implement it. It's not at a point where I guess it's as feasible for game development. It's still very early access, awesome technology, but it's just not quite there yet. In addition to that, there's a lot of studios that are just have workflows set up within them. Back a year ago, when I was looking at job postings, even for games like I think Forza or Halo, they're still using pre-baked lighting scenarios instead of like even real-time lighting scenarios. And of course, they'll use a mix of that, but it's important to know the limitations of what you can do with like Unreal Engine 5, but also why you would be using like a baked lighting solution instead.
Right. Just a quick comment for people watching. It would be nice if you leave a comment so I know that everything is working from Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. Also, you're free to ask questions if you have any curiosity of your own. I will put you up on the screen and read up your question. And also, please like and subscribe because while we have a live interview, it's easier for people. It pops up everywhere if you do that as well, and that I would be greatly appreciated for that as well. So, Dylan, let's talk a little bit about people who are, going through the same journey you kind of already went through in terms of you were a student, and a lot of people they are also even professional actually, and they're trying to transit over um, lighting artists. So what happened in the 3 years? Because 3 years is a very long time at DigiPen Studios, and you said a lot of things happened. You tried a lot of things. So why don't we go a little bit in depth in that journey first?
I think the to start out back in the illustration days, because that's kind of what like my high school experience was, a lot of illustration, a lot of concept art. Um, and the reason I went to college was because I felt like my fundamentals were just terrible. I couldn't draw on paper. I could draw pretty decently on a tablet, but my perspective was off, my anatomy was off. I guess I had good values and a good sense of um, what a good composition is, but past that, I had to go. I had to either devote a lot of time to that, or I go to college and get a more mentored experience,
Okay.
and that kind of what like led me into when going to college. That's kind of what I spent the first couple years at Digipen. I think at almost any art school, you spend the first couple years learning your fundamentals and really hammering down, what's good perspective, what's good composition, what are some key things to look out for. Uh, and after that, we had to kind of go into our own respective disciplines, and I actually really liked environment art. Um, Modeling, texturing, surface treatment was a very, very big part of what I liked about environment art. And that also kind of leans into lighting and trying to figure out how that looks.
All right. So that kind of I can put up one question on the screen here. Adil Khan is asking, he's doing 3D for Indie Studio and learning Unity and Unreal. So his main question is basically, is it essential to have a degree? Now you did take a degree. Would you say that's essential? I'm asking this also before asking the follow-up question, which is you also did a mentorship.
Mhm.
So is it essential to have the degree? What are the advantages of taking degree? And would you recommend someone to learn on their own or actually just do a degree?
There are a degree. I mean, to start out with like the really base bone answer. A degree is not necessary. It's it's not necessary at all. There's a lot of resources from online to mentorships to even workshops. I would highly recommend workshops if you just want to get better at art. But degrees aren't really necessary. You might find that on a lot of job postings for AAA studios or even some AA studios that they require a bachelor's. Um, you should still apply to them even if they do have a bachelor's on them, but the difference that you're getting in between like having a degree versus not having a degree is that oh you got a little
So
yeah.
sorry about it's London. There's always something happening in the background. I'm sorry about that.
London, that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. But the advantages that a degree gives you is that under a you're under a program. So you're under like a 4 year experience, you're under a 3 year, 2 year experience, and you're expected to have a certain results at the end of the experience. What you have after that is kind of bonus.
So,
Um,
would you say though, when you're a student for 3 years at least, you still require some self-discipline, right? It
oh
is
yeah.
what you put in. It's not like, as far as I know from other Digipen students, it's still a very tough school. It's what you put in.
Oh,
It's not like you go there for an hour every lecture and then you learn everything. You still need to put in it's very competitive. I've heard schools like Digipen and similar schools that have similar reputation. So. So would you say someone is able to keep up with that kind of? Would you say that someone who doesn't have self-discipline should probably go to school versus trying to learn on, right?
it depends on how you get to self-discipline, right? Because college is kind of unforgiving in in the aspect that it's if you don't go, if you don't put in the effort, you're not going to get anywhere. And in some schools, and actually a good chunk of schools, you'll find that they don't really they'll encourage you to go, but you don't really have to. At Digipen, they're pretty like you either go or you fail. So I wasn't a very self-disciplined student in the beginning, and you kind of learn to either be really really quick or do things way in advance
Okay.
and get that self-discipline.
So what happened? What made you more self-disciplined and take it seriously as opposed to not being self-disciplined?
Gosh, I'm like backtrailing because this is towards freshman and sophomore year. Um, I think the self-discipline came from a lot of just like wanting to get better, right?
Right.
Um, being that far behind and understanding, the consequences of being that far back in work and knowing that you have to get work done. You can't just like leave in the back to sit while you do other things. Um, knowing that is a pretty essential for at least for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. To the new people who are joining, you can ask your questions. Don't be afraid. Leave a comment. Anything is good. If it's good questions, I will put it on the screen for Dylan to answer. So that leads me to another thing that happens when you are a lighting artist is you say like you're a bit competitive in the sense that you want to be like better, maybe even the best in something. How do you feel when people are posting their own work in different Discord or online, and you see it pop up and you see the art station and you go, "Oh, this is really good piece." Do you get intimidated? Do you get motivated, demotivated? What happens to you? Do you like open up Unreal trying to do your own piece? How do you function in that context?
Oh man, all those things that you just said describe at least like me. um, you feel a sense of intimidation at first because you're like, oh no, they're at this awesome studio, or they're even sometimes like a junior artist. They're someone that isn't even in the industry yet, and you're like, that's insane. They're like so good.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel the same
but
also. Sometimes I look at the
oh
stuff pop up, I'm like, I'm screwed.
yeah, but then you realize. I mean, there's a sense of admiration as well. You're like, that's insane. That's like they did some really really smart things with how they're approaching this. They're doing a lot of really cool techniques. There's every time I open ArtStation, I have a list of people I follow, and they're just like, oh my gosh. But I think what the intimidation is then calmed down by like, experience is also a big factor because you don't know what's happening behind the scenes as well. You don't know their process or how they're approaching it or how you would even compare to the how comparatively how would you approach that problem, and then how much time did they even spend on it. So it's kind of like a lot, all those things mixed into one, and you're like,
Yeah, that's
this is
definitely the
awesome.
case for a lot of people, I think. But what I can do, I can tell, at least recommend people is it's always better to compete with yourself, because if you are like looking at other people and kind of competing against other, I think it can be a bit more challenging and demotivating. But if you can compete against yourself in the sense like you're doing quicker lighting pieces or better lighting pieces or better value than the previous version, I think all of these things are pretty valuable.
Mhm.
Speaking of value, you had one particular piece that wasn't very successful according to you. I was thinking maybe you could pull it up, share your screen, and we could kind of talk a little bit about that piece you did, and kind of pass on the knowledge. What do you feel about that?
Awesome. Yeah, I can go ahead and share my screen and give that a good whirl. Let's go ahead and see. Share screen. Screen two. There we go. All right. Are you able to see this?
Yep, here we go.
Awesome. So yeah, this one was during my mentorship with Blue Sky. I worked under Ari Rubinstein, and he was able to give me a couple like 4 or 5 scenes I was able to light from the ground up. I had to transfer all the materials and set up the shaders, but I had to light this. The problem with this, and the thing that I would highly recommend looking at, is have a good monitor or make sure you're looking at multiple different screens if you are, because it's not going to look the same. The monitor I was using for a lot of these pieces were from like 2006, 2007, and so a lot of the darker levels and the higher levels are crushed. So from my monitor, you can see a lot more details, kind of. But in this, it ends up getting washed out. So on most monitors, you'll see that it's actually kind of contrasty. It's like it's pushed too far. But other than that, uh, I mean, if I want to break down this piece even further, there's quite a few things that I like that I did with this one, which was highlighting this exit sign and pushing this the flow of this train here. The other important thing that was for this piece as well was pushing atmosphere and pushing that depth. So making sure that these are silhouetting and getting that nice rim light on them, and having that small, slight atmospheric fog. But there are a bit of competing elements in this, like how bright some of these posts are, or just how reflective everything is. And so,
Um,
yeah.
did you use a reference or did you just go with the flow?
I had a mood board to go from, but other than that, I just kind of went with what I thought looked good. Um,
Um,
yeah,
we have a question from Fateh. What was the mood you were trying to go for this particular scene?
I was trying to go for like a dingy, a moody kind of grungy scene. I really wanted to push a few of the greens in here. I think the Matrix was one of my reference pieces for this as well, but or things I looked at a decent chunk. But I wanted to really capitalize on that like dirty atmosphere, right?
Right. So this is one of the pieces that didn't go as planned because you didn't have the necessary screen and you didn't check the other related content on like
Yes.
mobile phone or something, right?
Yeah.
Um, so let's look at the piece that you do consider like a decent piece, and let's break it down and see what we get from that piece.
Sure. I can go ahead and go. Let's see. I can grab like this one. I think this one is a pretty solid scene. Just as a very basic warming scene. Uh But the thing I wanted to go for with this scene was that kind of like early morning, sunshine coming in, the lights are off, and really capitalize, try to get that feeling with this one. And so for a lot of the lighting, I used a skylight coming in, and that's kind of how I got a lot of those bluer shadows up here. And I capitalized on that like ray that those bounce lighting, and then I threw in a couple of area lights to shine some stuff down and really highlight the edge on here and highlight some areas on here. And then yeah, other than that, I pushed some foreground elements to, again, just to help sell the scene a bit, but sell scale and sell depth in here. So we have some repeating shapes kind of going off in the distance, but one really close in the foreground. Uh, and yeah, other than that, I graded it in Nuke, and
So, did you have any intention or plans when you started it? Did you have like references? Did you look? Did you do any? Um, was this more of an artistic approach, or did you use EV or Lux that is scientific? What approach did you use?
for this one specifically, I did have a little bit of reference, just kind of what early morning. There's a lot of screenshots you'll find online of architectural renderings or just of apartment buildings, and kind of the feeling of light coming in and bouncing everywhere, and getting that early morning feeling. But for this, like a lot of these pieces, I kind of went with the flow and tried to. I was given a prompt, and I tried to capture that as much as possible.
Okay.
I didn't for these ones, since I wasn't doing it, for even though I should for a game or a project. I didn't strictly adhere to a specific lux value or specific any sort of standardization. But
All right. Was there any other piece that you think are worth going through?
I could talk about. I think the interesting one was the game I worked on for my senior project. Uh, so this one was an interesting project. This took a year and a half, I think, 3 semesters from the ground up. And we actually pretty much on the third semester rebuilt the entire environment. But this is just an example of kind of the production and what we were able to achieve within Unity. And for this scene specifically, what we had to do is, as a player, you come in, you see this overwhelmingly tall, cathedral-like area, and you have to go up to the statue at the very end, and then you have to fight hordes of mobs. But it was important to realize that this is kind of the transition point before you fight a lot of the boss areas. So over the course of the game, you see that the light, the time of day will change, and so this is a really good opportunity to highlight some warm versus cool, and push that feeling.
All right. And what did you say? This was baked or real time or?
This was both. We both used some shadow masks. A lot of the ambient occlusion and darker areas in this level were baked in, but these like brighter parts were. I think we used a shadow mask, a solution, to help give some shadows to the player when you like walked through the lighting.
Okay. So you had some other pieces that you did during your mentorship, right?
Mm.
Why don't you pull up one of those pieces up and also talk a little bit about your mentorship, because it obviously has some positive effect for you when you did the mentorship. Let's talk about the value of mentorship, because you, even though you went 3 years at DigiPen, you also had an opportunity for mentorship. So let's talk about that.
Awesome. So actually, this one's moving, so we'll just go with like a static one. So yeah, my mentorship was Fantastic. I actually, though the way I got it was pretty interesting. I applied to Bluesky Studios for a job, but this is like right before COVID hit. Um, and so I went through the interview process and everything, and then they called me back and they were like, "COVID's happening. We're not doing internships this year. But would you be interested in a mentorship? Because you were one of the like the top. You were one of the candidates that we like. You were one of the top candidates for the position."
So how
And
does that
so
work though? Because when you say mentorship, I think it was the difference between mentorship and internship. Was it the same thing, or how does it work?
the mentorship was a lot more freeform. It was more dependent on what the person doing the mentoring kind of felt like they wanted to do. And in this case, we both decided, we talked about it, and we decided that we were going to do 5, 6 pieces throughout the course of the mentorship, and we're going to light them from the ground up. And so we met I think like twice a week. I think it was twice a week to go over those pieces uh, through like a 7 week process, 8 week process.
All right. So what did you learn, and what did you take away from your experience and the mentorship?
I think the biggest thing I learned was grading. Before, I didn't actually really do any compositing, specifically for a lot of film VFX. So I was able to jump into Nuke, and I was able to do learn a lot about render passes and how to composite them together, and grade things. Like in this piece right here, there's like a kind of a mist coming around stuff, but all of that is kind of graded in and built into that scene. Some of the rim lights are even built in as grading as well. So that was the biggest takeaway I would say for the mentorship itself. Um, the other one was just again emphasizing moods, and this is actually one of the first times I actually did a relight for or not having something I built from the ground up. Uh, so it was definitely was like everything was set up for me. So I, other than the shaders and materials, so I was able to go in and just quickly make those adjustments.
Cool. So how often do you use the stuff you've learned so far on your own pieces now, if you were to do it?
I actually don't use Nuke as nearly as much. If I was doing more film VFX or pre-rendered things, I definitely would use Nuke or DaVinci Resolve. But as it stands now, I think the biggest thing I still use today is a lot of grading techniques, making sure that the ranges are in a specific way, understanding how to create, this a good balance within the composition, all of those things.
You have a you have this piece as well
Mhm.
from.
That was pretty recent.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I see you put it up.
Oh yeah, I can go
Um,
and grab that. Wow, there we go. Yeah. So
so how did you approach this piece?
this is actually funnily enough about this piece. I was I think around this is before I got hired at Retro, but I dedicated like a week to 2 weeks to doing a new piece and just lighting it, starting from the scratch. And for a piece like this, I think I was looking at different movie stills, and I saw one that caught my eye where it was a hospital hallway. I loved the wall material on it, and I liked the kind of stale mood it gave off, but I wanted to push it into a kind of a direction. And this is kind of where I ended up being. So I started by modeling the hallway itself, had it making the materials for everything, and then I threw everything into Unreal, and I started setting up some lights, trying to capture this sort of like, again, creepy, macabre mood, and pushing that green and yellow and warms.
Oh, okay. So, what are some of the tips you would pass on to people who are trying to become a lighting artist? Or, I mean, they can also be 3D artists, it doesn't really matter, but anyone who's trying to do some kind of lighting, what would you advise them to learn and pick up to improve, for example, their portfolio pieces or lighting an environment that they buy? Um, is this something you can pass on to people that you think is useful that you wish you knew 4 years ago or 3 years ago?
I think the biggest thing that I picked up was actually not from lighting, my adventure in lighting, but it was a lot of the things I learned in environment art and illustration. Understanding, the fundamentals of composition, creating depth, creating mood, from illustration was really, really powerful for me, at least. Because if I came to a piece like this, actually sometimes what I'll do is I'll throw it into Photoshop and I'll do a quick painting over it, or I'll sketch over stuff. Um, and then from environment, you learn a lot of the technical know-hows of how things are built. You could identify problems like that because you know the fundamentals of PBR and how things are built from the scratch. So I say that would be my biggest advice is to really delve into making the environments yourself. Actually, I don't know. I see a lot of people doing like relights in their portfolio, but I actually like seeing a lot of like handmade environments for lighting artists, just because they have a lot more time to set up their own compositions within it. They have a lot more time to push the final image towards their own direction.
So, so when you say when you're saying make your own environment, are you telling modeling, or are you saying um, putting it together using assets that they buy?
I think putting it together through like assets is honestly pretty good because again, you're creating the composition, you're creating the environment from the ground up. So you control the composition, you control what's in the scene, and so you'll have a much better time just kind of lighting it and making it look better. But I think as a lighting artist, you should at least have built one environment from scratch at the very least, because understanding, you know, the performance and the topology, and what goes into the textures and what's important in that sense is it helps build your fundamental understanding of not only visually how do I compose this scene, but also performance wise, what's going on in the scene and how do I attribute anything to what?
A lot of people will not do it, obviously, because they just want to light, and they will buy asset packs for this exact reason. Because time is valuable, of course.
It
So
is.
I understand point of view. We have another questions. First, we have a compliment from Adil. We appreciate
Awesome.
your effort, thanks.
Thank you.
And then we have a question from Fateh. Would you recommend any resources to better understand composition, color theory, etc.?
Composition color theory. There's a few ones I can think of at the top of my head. Marco Bucci actually is well, I guess to start off, I like whenever I look at like color theory or composition, I actually look at a lot of painters, oil painters specifically, um, because they spend an ungodly amount of time working on oil paintings, so they have to make sure their composition, their color theory, everything is good from the ground up. Uh, so I look at artists like sometimes I like to watch artists, oil artists paint. Um, Ryan Pancoast, a lot of Magic the Gathering artists are actually really good in that aspect. Um, they do fantastic oil paintings, and some of them will actually upload their process of how they paint it. So Ryan Pancoast is a really good resource. Um, Marco Bucci, he's a kind of like children's book store illustrator, but he has some really, really good resources on color theory and approaching composition. But other than that, your next level would be like stepping up and looking at ArtStation tutorials. There's actually a really, really good amount of them that just kind of delve into basics of color theory and
Did you mention
yeah,
schoolism by any chance?
schoolism. Is schoolism a? I actually haven't ever heard of. I think.
Schoolism, it's they've been around for a while. I know if I know someone who knows
Oh, this
the
guy.
person. So schoolism is different. They started out with 2D only,
Hmm.
and then they expanded a little bit to ZBrush and stuff. I mean, I watched a few things from there myself. It looks interesting. It's a bit expensive for my taste, but
Yeah.
definitely useful.
Yeah.
Um, you have another question. Trim sheets are the trim sheets on the walls.
So these are actually, this is a funny story because I built this. This is actually not a trim sheet. It's just a single texture, just kind of repeating across this. I guess you could use it as a trim sheet, but honestly, that would be a more efficient way of doing it. But on the walls, I built everything in Quixel Mixer, I believe, and because I had a specific intention in mind, that kind of comes down to like goal oriented, approaching these with a goal in mind. So I had a specific reason why I did all this, but if I was making this for like a game, I would try to separate these into different different elements so I can dynamically build that as either tall or low as I wanted it to be. But yeah, I also highly recommend. I was gonna say past ArtStation learning, going into doing mentorships and doing workshops would be my like next big recommendation because you'll learn a lot, at least from composition and lighting there.
Cool. And the question for me, how do you find about the live sessions? You have to subscribe, click the bell, and kind of pay attention to stuff. As I said, I'm rebranding this channel to Lighting Bot, so you can find without logo right now on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. Easiest right now for you is probably join the Discord channel. You can find the Discord link in the description. That's probably, I guess, the best way to
Oh,
find things out.
okay.
Um, so yeah, there's a Discord link. I can send it. It's a still not a lot going in there, but again, I'm happy to have people stop by and kind of help build the community. So I'll post it here for you to join. Looks good. And of course, I will also drag in Dylan there. He will get a specific role called contributor. And we might go there after this chat as well to hang out a little bit. And you guys can also join in Discord and talk a little bit directly with him and myself if you want to, before we call it dinner time in my case. So, Dylan, where are you living right now, by the way?
I'm currently actually I was studying up in Washington, but I'm currently in Oregon, kind of that West Coast area. So it's 11:38 where I'm at right now,
All
a.m.
right. Okay. Well,
So
hopefully we won't keep you up too late then. Um, I
oh
saw
no.
you popped up some resource links or something. Is
Yeah,
there
no.
is
Oh,
there any other suggestions, advices you have for people to go to places and learn stuff?
uh, I would recommend because I was looking at different workshops and different like places. I think it would be really good. The Workshop Academy is something I would highly recommend if you. They only have like concept artists and illustrations on there, but you'll find like a lot of really good artists post there. Actually, a Digipen alumni who did some work for Magic the Gathering and gosh, what's it called? I think they ArenaNet teaches right there right now. But
Sold out, sold out, sold
yeah,
out.
everything's sold out. Oh gosh, that sucks. But you'll find a lot of like really good artists on there, like Tatiana Kupernova. Um, I think sometimes teaches on there. Gosh, what's another one?
I mean,
Brainstorm, I think is also a really good resource as well.
brainstorm,
Brainstorm Academy, I think it's here. Brainstorm School. Yeah.
brainstorm school.
Yeah, some non-dog art concept artists. I think I can't remember his name, but the person that like leads Brainstorm is also a really good concept artist to look at.
I mean, Dylan just mentioned two sites I've never ever heard of. So this is actually completely new to me as well. Um, just gonna
Just sweet.
resources. I can also mention a couple of resources. I don't normally mention it. Um, you can also go to learnsquare.com. Um, it's has a lot of different things there. Maybe not lighting specific, but it's different things like modeling and 3D art concepts. I did the 3D concept course there to kind of learn how to basically do a 3D code, because I prefer 3D code over a set brush. And there are a
Okay.
few places who teaches that. So I thought that was pretty cool and useful to learn. Of course, the Game School Online is where I have received a lot of my mentorship, which is not that known for some reason, but a lot
Game
of
School Online.
yeah, there's a lot of artists come from there. They have another channel called Blue Champ, which does similar things like this. So I guess Game School Online is a go-to place for some mentorship. Um, if you want some different kind of mentorship, I do offer my lighting mentorship too. So if you need that, you can always come to me, and I'm happy to help you with some different lighting mentorship. This is one of my favorite pieces that I have. I did a free tutorial on YouTube, which you can look at too, doing like Joko lighting of the subway. You can see here. So I mean, there are a lot of people offering different things. So you gotta find what suits you and what you're trying to do. Um, but yeah, let's see, what other places can you go learn? CGMA, I guess I've done their mentorship there as well with Umar Gatika.
There's Nomon, I think. Nomon Workshop, right?
Yeah, Noman workshop. I've done experience points tutorials, not mentorship specifically, from juniors, because there's always something to learn. I don't really care if someone is junior or not. If I think they have something to teach, I'll pay attention. Yeah.
I would also say like reaching out to any artist that you really like or look up to, and getting their advice is one of the best things you can do. Especially if they're currently active in the industry, because it's directly you're essentially directly talking to someone that's in the industry. You know how they got there, and if they're really good, um, and you know that too, they're pretty quick to respond and give some really good advice to you. I would
Yeah,
say.
there's
Uh,
definitely.
Having to go past it, it comes down to like kind of that fear factor though, right? Of just you have to like push back after at and like reach out to that people.
Yeah, I think definitely there's opportunities there, and yeah, most people are keen to help in general. Of course, there's a limit on how often you can get the help. That's where mentorship comes in, because it's consistent. You're paying for the help versus receiving some help. If I ask too much help for some people and it's connected to paid work somehow, I normally just pay the person because I don't want to owe any favor. So
Yeah.
so I just throw in some money instead. Um, that's cool. So did we cover most of our bases that we wanted to talk about? I'm not sure.
Uh,
Mm. Feel free to ask questions. We're not gonna kill you if you ask questions. Feel free to join the Discord channel. We might hang out there soon, a little bit before he goes to bed and I cook food.
oh no, it's 11 a.m.
It's 11
12:44
a.m.
a.m.
before he spends time eating brunch. Uh, so you are obviously just started Retro Studio as well. Let's talk a little bit about that. What's going on? You can
Awesome.
probably not talk about the projects, but
Yeah.
what engine are you using, and kind of what is your workflow and everyday responsibility right now? I'm assuming you're working from home as well.
The engine and a lot of that stuff is unfortunately under NDA, so I can't talk about that.
Hmm.
The workflow is also a bit under NDA. I guess I could talk a bit about the, at least from what the job description has posted, and let me know. So a lot of the work I've been doing is taking scenes and, well, I can't talk too much. Nintendo has snipers on me right now. I can't
So let's translate it into like, think of it as if you're doing it on Real Engine, like what kind of workflow are you doing, like kind of responsibility are you doing, like how would you light things in this engine compared to Unreal Engine, for example?
there's a lot more baked lighting, so each engine has its own difficulties. I would say the biggest difference between engines is the the tools that you're like given, right? With Unreal, you have a lot of options. You can do baked, you can do dynamic, you can make shaders for everything. But in a lot of when you go to companies, you're going to start using their proprietary engines, and they're going to have a specific workflow and specific tools to achieve an effect for lighting. And so in my case, I'm using a lot of baked lighting for objects. So I have to I have to run the bake a lot more. I have to go through bakes a lot more. There's not as much dynamic light, so I can't actively see things update in real time. It's kind of like if you're working on a path traced image. So it takes a bit longer. The other part is you have to always be wary of in Unreal you can have like 50 lights or something and like 50 static lights. But in most proprietary engines you have to like focus on optimizing the lights and optimizing how much you're using and how much value you get out of using a single light. Yeah.
That's cool. So have you been able to learn something from cinematography, movies? Is there any specific sources that you have used other than traditional painting or photography? I don't know if you do photography, and if you watch movies, like this is also quite important to talk about, I think, and get an understanding of.
Oh gosh. I mean it's unfortunate because like the two biggest resources for me were a lot of oil paintings like Magic people that worked in like Magic the Gathering and stuff like that, or a lot of artists like those. Um but and games as well has such a really good resource for at least the technical side of lighting. But in terms of like cinematography, I think recently I just started watching a lot of older French films. They do some very interesting camera techniques and presentation, and they really emphasize chiaroscuro or like shapes and shadows, um, and trying to make the most out of what they have at that time. I think that's like also a really big part of it is trying to make the most of what they have with their with the tools at their handed. Um, in terms of movies, oh gosh, I think I just watched a movie called Foxtrot.
Okay.
That was a really is a really beautiful movie. It was very good looking. Gosh, I'm trying to not too many films actually come up to up to my mind. Uh,
I'm not really good at that question myself. I also freeze up. Yeah, I was doing one of the interviews and they were asking me, "What's your favorite cinematographer artist?" I'm like totally blank, and I was just being honest that I don't really have favoritism. It's more like when I have to look it up, I look it up, and
yeah.
then I kind of research it as needed, and kind of go with the flow from that point of view.
If you
So
want
we have, yeah, go on.
I was just gonna say, if you want a really good resource, it's just for finding stills in movies. Shot Deck is a
Yep.
pretty good resource if you haven't seen it before. I think Movie Still TV or something was a really good one.
Yeah, I mean, shortag is definitely becoming an industry standard.
Oh yeah.
It's obviously going to cost money, or is starting to cost money. Obviously, I don't know how long the beta lasts, but a good idea is to take advantage of it while it lasts for free
Oh yeah.
until your studio actually pays for it. So that's cool. Um, you have another question? Let me put it up on the screen. how would you light a single player versus multiplayer?
I think it comes down to it's goal oriented lighting, right? Because you'll have a lot more control over what you can do with the lighting with a campaign or a single player, because you know how the player is going to move through the scene. You know where the camera is going to be, and you know exactly what the goals are for the player. So you'll be able to, uh, you know, I think The Last of Us is a really, really good example of this. You'll see a lot of shots where things are cleanly laid out, the composition is really, really good, and it's very clear where the player needs to go because you see like a single ray of light hitting that area. In multiplayer, it gets a bit sketchier because you have to make sure no areas are too dark, enemies stand out against everything, and the it's super dynamic. So you don't know if the players are going to be like, for example, in like Apex Legends or in Titanfall, if there's going to be a lot of verticality, you have to make sure that the tops of areas are lit well. Um, so making sure that everything is very clear and readable, I would say, is one of the most important parts for lighting multiplayer. Um, Actually, Call of Duty ran into this problem with I think they had a problem with their multiplayer where it's a really funny shot, but like you see a windowsill and inside it's like super dark and you don't there's a person like literally shooting at the main player, but you can't see that person because they're in that like shaded shadow area, and I don't think that would fly if in like a multiplayer scenario.
Right.
So understanding your goals and what the game is trying to go for so you can light to that, um, is I guess the key for that.
Right. So, what would you say the difference is between gameplay lighting versus shot lighting or personal pieces? What are the pros and cons of doing it? Obviously, there are some limitations, right?
Performance is the biggest one. Um, you have a lot more control with a personal piece or with a controlled scene with a cinematic, because you can say you can add rims, you can add fills to specific areas or characters, you can highlight specific parts. But when you're looking at a gameplay scene, the most challenging part is the camera is almost always freeform. I think there's a really good GDC talk on like how Grand Theft Auto achieved this, or how they like challenged this sort of thing. I have to look it up, but uh, they were tasked with designing an environment and seeing what the most common angles were for players, where they were looking, so they could light those in those scenarios. So they had to. So with that, you have to know kind of where the player is looking, um, what elements are kind of what where the focus is, what the gameplay elements are, and then there's the obvious performance limitations. You can't really have rim lights on every character, unless you're like Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah,
Um,
unfortunately.
yeah, I was watching their reveal, and I saw like a rim light coming on characters, like their heads, and I was like, that's really cool, but it's also like a little distracting. I see why they do it, but
I think a lot of people started talking about it when the trailer came out. A lot of people started making memes and pictures and just really pointing it out that that's really cool or not cool, and pros and cons for that. Um
and then the more dynamic you also get, the more performance limitations you'll run into as well. Especially with like, I'm a little bit against it, but real time day and night cycles, just because you lose out on a lot of creating like really specific scenarios. I think Red Dead Redemption does it really well. You might find, but yeah, those are like the I think the biggest limitations.
That's cool. So, is there any last words you would like to add before I drag you at least into Discord? If people want to join us on Discord just to hang out, it just also makes me more comfortable because I don't have to be as organized and think too much. It's more of a free conversation on Discord afterwards. Is there any last words or thoughts?
Uh, keep at it. It's a rough being a lighting artist.
At the back, keep
Yeah,
at it.
it's a really. I would say it's one of the more niche. It's like a tech artist, right? It's a really niche job. It's a really niche thing to get into, and there's not as many resources, surprisingly, for it. A lot of the resources you'll find will have to come from other disciplines, painting, environment art, stuff like that. So it's a bit harder to get yourself into. But if it's something that you really want to do, reach out to people, go for those resources, and push towards it because it's really fun.
Cool. With that, I'm gonna remind people that you can receive lighting mentorship from me, or you cannot. Doesn't really bother me, but at least you have somewhere to get some help if you need it. I do want to remind. I haven't made the live stream yet, but there is most likely going to be a live stream from someone from Redefine. It's not a known place just yet, but it's gonna be from this place here, and I believe he's a lighting technical director, and he's gonna have a talk. We're gonna talk to him on Sunday next week, which is the next live stream on Sunday. Again, if you guys know anyone who could be interested, who are within the lighting artist niche, send them over to me. I'm happy to do some more talks. It is very time consuming and hard to find people who have the time and interest to do it. So I would appreciate any help with that kind of work. So I'm going to end the stream and we're going to go over to the Discord. Again, the Discord that has been posted in the comment field is also in the description. We're just going to hang there a little bit and chill. And who knows what goodies might pop up in the Discord. It's a more free form. It's not being recorded, so it's easier to show certain things that we wouldn't show on the live stream. For example, in my case, if I show some projects and stuff, it's I don't want it to be on the live stream. So thanks for watching. I appreciate all the questions. I appreciate some of you that are actually watching pretty much every live stream. That's cool. I appreciate that. And hopefully we'll see Dylan King again after a couple of, I don't know, 6 months. Stuff might happen. Might bring him back in. I might do a lighting panel. I might do a group lighting panel. So there'll be like 3-4 of us just having a talk about something, maybe a specific movie or game or just whatever, just to kind of break up the type of live streams a little bit. There will be specific tech talk as well about PBR, real time in Unreal and exposure from someone who had already been here and done the live stream. So we're kind of mixing it up and bringing back people. So we are like introducing people right now, the background and everything, like a little bit about Dylan, his background, how he got started, and then hopefully he can come back and we'll go more hands-on stuff and kind of show off a little bit. I also got distracted by Dylan's background because I keep seeing he has this cookie gobo effect on the wall that's slowly going down from his window. I can see from the right side, it's just going down, and I just keep looking at it as a lighting artist. So again, thank you. Please join us on Discord if you can. If not, that's cool. Thank you, and see you on Discord. Goodbye. Bye.
Bye.